Welcome to Backstage Pass with Gail Davis, your invitation into the world of keynote speaking and event planning expertise. Join us as we pull back the curtain and dive into exclusive interviews with speaking industry experts. From seasoned speakers to master event planners, we're here to provide you with the ultimate backstage experience. Get ready to unlock valuable insights, tips, and strategies that will elevate your events and leave your audience inspired. Hello, my name is Gail Davis, and you're at Backstage Pass. I am so excited about our guest today, Ron White. Over the last 15 years, Ron has become the second most booked speaker in GDA's history, and we booked him well over 200 times. Ron is a two-time USA Memory Champion, and he has a super interactive presentation that addresses some of the common struggles people have, like remembering names, remembering faces. And he does a great job of tying in how this skill is not only good for business, but it's good for relationships. So I know he's going to dive into all that today, and I'd like to just start with a big welcome to GDA's friend, Ron White.
Well, thank you, Gail. You are, I was talking to somebody about you recently, and you were doing an event where you were watching a movie about Nando's story. What was the name of that movie?
It was called The Society of the Snow.
Society of the Snow. And I was in your office right before that happened, and I asked you, who are you inviting to this premiere? And you said, well, we're inviting clients, and we're inviting friends. And when you said friends, you looked at me and I thought, I left that meeting that day, and I thought that means to me more than anything that she said that being a friend of Gail Davis. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still want the speeches.
Yeah,
being your friend is a high compliment.
That's what I love about this industry is you can't help but become friends with the good speakers that you work with a lot, and also with the clients that bring back their business. So we're lucky where we really are. So I was thinking back, Ron, how in the world did I meet you? And it's such a great thing because you're here. I say you're here local, you're over more on the Fort Worth side. But I remember I hired a new employee. Her name was Abilee Gilman. And at her previous company, she had seen you speak, and she kept bringing your name up. And honestly, I think something came up, and it was a deal where like GDA could provide a speaker code for no fee. And I remember we called you and you were like, sure, I'll do it. What a good move that was. 217 bookings later. I'm just so grateful that Abilee mentioned you and that you did that for us, because it's been a lot of fun over the years for sure.
Well, I agree. And oddly, I gave that speech for the group Abilee was in probably 17 or 18 years ago. And it was one of those things, hey, do you want to provide a speaker? And I was driving there, and I'm not kidding. I remember it so specifically. I was driving there and I was thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this speech? And it was a small group. I mean, like less than 10 people. I'm like, if I don't show up, they're not even going to care. And, but I'm a professional. I don't do that. I said, just show up. You never know what's going to happen. I showed up, gave the speech, and a year or two later, Abilee introduced me to you, and what a great thing.
Okay. So, I know the answers to a lot of these questions, so I'm asking them for our listeners. And question number one is, how did you decide to become a memory expert? What was involved in that journey?
Well, it was 33 years ago, believe it or not. And I know that sounds impossible because I look like I'm 27 years old.
That's right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but I'm 18 plus 33. I'll let everybody figure it out. But 33 years ago, I was a struggling college student, and that's an understatement. I had a 0.9 GPA at North Texas, and I actually kicked out of college, and I was a telemarketer making cold calls for a chimney sweep company. So I would call people all day long. Can we clean your chimney? Can we clean your chimney? Can we clean your chimney? And one day I called this guy and I said, "Hey man, we got a chimney cleaning crew out in your neighborhood." You know, I was an 18-year-old kid, and he said, "Ron, we don't want our chimney cleaned. We're trying to sell our house." And I said, "Well, sir, if you're trying to sell your house, don't you think it's going to help if your chimney's clean?" And it kind of caught him off guard. He was like, "You know what, man?" He said, "I really don't want a chimney cleaned, but," he said, "I do need a good telemarketer." He said, "Do you want to go to work for me? I sell memory training seminars, and I'll pay you more than you're making now," which was a pretty safe bet. You know, anybody could have said that to me and they would have been right. I took down his information. I met him 2 or 3 days later in Dallas at a restaurant. We talked, and he said, "You know, I'm not even a." This is the crazy thing. He said, "I'm not even a manager at this memory training company." He said, "I'm just a telemarketer, but I think you would be really good. So I'm going to go into the office every day, but I'm going to have you work out of my house, making cold calls every day. And I'm just going to take an override on your sales, and we're not going to tell them we're not we're two people." And he ended up winning Salesman of the Year that year, and the whole story went public in the company, and that's how I got started.
That is so funny. So how did you're selling memory courses as a telemarketer, and then you become a 2-time world champion. So did you take the courses that you were selling via telemarketing?
Yeah, so I took the courses, you know, and that company, they had some internal problems. The company split, and I was in a situation where I just went out on my own, and I formed my company, and then I, you know, just started practicing the system and getting speeches, and this was about 1993, 94. And then probably for the next 10 years, as my speaking career developed, my bio got more and more grand. And what I mean by grand is I no longer went from Ron White as a guy who teaches memory training to Ron White, one of the world's foremost memory experts. And I remember being at the back of the room, and I was thinking, man, what have I done other than just give a lot of speeches to prove that I'm one of the foremost memory experts? I mean, I've done nothing really other than just speak a lot. So I said, I got to do something, or take that out of my bio, just from a point of honesty, really.
Right.
I found the USA Memory Championships, and I determined that I wanted to win that. And I became the 2-time USA Memory Champion, and I set the record for the fastest to memorize a deck of cards in the United States, the record for the longest number memorized in 5 minutes in the United States, 167-digit number, and some other records. But I'll tell you this, Gail, the switch happened for me when I no longer wanted to be just a guy selling memory courses or giving a memory speech. I wanted to be one of the true experts, one of the true people who mastered the art of memory, because I do see it as an art, and I feel that I've done that.
I remember traveling with you years ago to Barcelona, and you were in training for one of these championships. And it blew my mind. I mean, there was no alcohol. You were eating so clean. And every time we had a spare minute in a airport, you got out those cards and you were just memorizing them and timing yourself. So there's really a training aspect to this.
There is, and I haven't competed competitively really in a decade. I did compete in a 2018 tournament, but you know, and I was training for that. But I'll tell you this: there is a discipline to it. There is a discipline, and there's a system, and it gets you in a different mindset. And I'll be honest with you: there's a tournament this Sunday at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. I mean, there's not going to be
Yeah.
dumb people at this tournament. Okay.
No.
And they've been emailing me for 2 months. Ron, will you compete? Will you compete? You're a former champion. I'm like, yeah, I'm a former champion, but I'm also 51. You know, these people are not just half my age. They're a third of my age. But they're like, come on, Ron, we really like to have you there as a former champion. So about 3 weeks ago, I made the decision to compete. I will be there this Sunday, competing at MIT. And the reason I'm not competing is I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I don't even have anything to prove to myself at this point. But what I do want is that feeling of discipline you get from training for a tournament. And
Yes.
that's what I'm
Yes.
looking for.
That is so cool. What are some of the benefits and what's the importance of people having a good memory? I mean, some of them are obvious, but I think there's others.
Yeah, there's whatever you're doing, if you're a business person, if you're a student, or if you're a retired person, really. But let's look at the business person aspect first. You are in business, you're going to a conference, you meet 10, 20, 30 new people, maybe at a trade show. They're coming by your booth, and you're meeting them so fast, and then you see them downstairs in the restaurant, and they had just been to your booth, and maybe you can't read their name tag or they don't have a name tag on. Remembering names and faces builds relationships. In my speech, I always say memory equals relationships. Relationships equal business. I spoke for a lumber association a couple years ago, and they put me right before the conference ended for their trade show, and they said, "Ron, we want you to speak. We want you to teach them how to remember names and faces, because as soon as your session is over, they're going out into the trade show and they're going to
Right.
be." And we want takeaways right away. And names and faces is huge for memory and building relationships. Zig Ziglar used to say, people don't care how much you know until they first know how much you care. So many speakers have to get up on a stage and read the teleprompter or read their PowerPoint or read their notes. When you can give the speech without reading your notes, it makes you a more charismatic speaker. Learning your product knowledge or sales presentations, there's so much that a good memory will help. Clearly, it helps for students, but business people, it is names and faces, product knowledge, giving speeches without notes, just learning faster.
You mentioned students, and one of the big groups of people that we booked you for so many times is YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. And I remember we went through a period where you offered study techniques for students. So maybe Ron was booked for an evening event for the YPOers and their spouses, guests, but in the afternoon, the students came and he taught them study skills, which I thought was really cool and nice add-on.
Yeah, it was. And the YPO did that a couple different ways. They did it the way you suggested. They had an afternoon session for the kids, and then the evening session, I spoke for the YPO leaders. There was one specifically one. I remember that I did the YPO session, and then afterwards, the adults, the parents had a networking thing, and I went to
Oh,
another room and worked with the kids for an hour.
I love that.
And then some of them, they had it combined. They just brought their kids into the general session. So,
Mhm.
but that's a big thing. I tell people that that the kids' struggles oftentimes at school is a confidence struggle. They don't think they're smart, and when they can spend 30 minutes or an hour and learning some memory skills, and they're like, "Whoa, I'm pretty smart." It just changes the game for everybody.
Oh, that reminds me of the fantastic video that you have on YouTube where you were teaching the little girl, I think she was 5, and you were teaching her how to go through the house and remember the names of the presidents of the United States. Was she about 5 years old, Ron?
It's a very good memory. She was barely 6 years old, so yes, you have a very good memory
Oh,
yourself. And
oh my gosh. She was so excited. The pace just kept picking up, and Ron was running through the house, and she's watching Jefferson Adams. I mean, it was so fun. So it does give kids confidence to learn something like that.
it is, yeah, it is, and it is fun, and it is a confidence booster. And a 6-year old kid, I taught to memorize the presidents of the United States. At the time, there was 44 presidents, so it was up to Obama. 44 presidents, and and I didn't work with her over 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even
No.
2 days. This was one night after dinner, about an hour, and using the same system that I teach adults. She memorized the president's forwards and backwards. And after she did it, I said, "Kaylee, can we do this one more time, but can I film it?" And she said, "You can film it for $1." So I got my dollar and my cell phone, and it was the best dollar I
Uh,
spent.
oh, it's fantastic. So, for anyone listening that hasn't had Ron White speak at your event, I will tell you that we have a motto at GDA Speakers, which is everyone needs to book Ron White. They just may not know it yet. So, Ron is absolutely the perfect kickoff for an event because he has a little, should we call it a trick, Ron, that he does where he shows up, and let's say you have him first thing in the morning, then he's at the continental breakfast. Let's say you have him kick off in the afternoon, he's hanging out at lunch, and he walks around and mingles. And in the process, he is learning the names of your attendees, but no one knows that's what he's doing. And he gets up on stage and he's a fun introduction, gets everyone's attention. And then he says, if I met you and I shook your hand, please cover up your name tag, stand up. And he jumps off the stage and I mean, Ron, it is just so fascinating. He's got those names down, and it just sets the tone, because there are people who've been working at that company 5, 6, 7 years who couldn't do what Ron just did. So it's one of my favorite things. Are you still doing that a lot, Ron?
Oh, I do it every time, and I was just enjoying your description of it, because that's exactly how I do it. I'll meet I can meet up to 300 people. 301 is the most I've ever repeated. But I say my safe spot, and by I mean safe, where I feel real comfortable, I don't think anything's going to go wrong, is about 200 people. And I'll meet those 200 people. I'll have them stand up, then I'll run through the audience, and in 200 people, I can recite those names in a couple minutes, But it's going so fast, everybody's laughing. They're like, "What's going on? Does he have an earpiece in?" And I still do it. I've been doing it for 33 years. And I'll tell you where I saw that in the 1980s. I was a teenager, and I was a huge Tonight Show fan. I mean, I was an enormous Tonight Show fan. And I know that sounds really odd for a teenager to love watching Johnny Carson, but I did. And there was a guy on the Tonight Show named Harry Lorraine. He was on there 27 times in the 1980s, and he was a memory expert and a magician. Sometimes he would do magic, sometimes he would do memory. One time on there, he memorized the studio audience at the commercial break. They came back from the break. The studio audience stood up, and he went through and said their names. So I stole that from Harry Lorraine. Harry Lorraine died 2 years ago at the age of 94, something like that. But before he died, I got to talk to him on the phone and told him that I've been honoring him for 30 years with that demo.
I mentioned earlier, you and I traveling to Barcelona, you did it there. And two things stand out to me. One, that was called like the Global Leadership, GLC, Global Leadership Conference. So people were from all over the world. These were not Tom, Dick, Jane, Sally. These were some international names, and you were very successful. The other thing I remember is you got to two people, and you could just see the wheels in your brain working, and you were like, pass. And you went and you finished the whole room, and these two gals were standing. I don't know if you remember this. And you were like, did I really meet you before we came in the room? And they fessed up. They said, no, you did not.
I don't remember that, but yes.
They were trying to trick him, and it was just fantastic. Oh, goodness. So I love that. The whole presentation's interactive. He involves the audience in memorizing a 60-digit number, 32-digit numbers, which equals 60, right? So 22, 17, 11, 88, 99. And people are like writing this down. So it's so organic, and he's up there and he's like, okay, I think I got it. And he does it. But then the part that blows me away, Ron, is then you start talking about blueberries or something, and how blueberries are so important to your memory. And it's almost as if we left that 60-digit number behind. And then you're like, hey, wait a minute. You guys still have that piece of paper? And you do it backwards. I mean, it is just mind-blowing. It's so much fun.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And you have a good memory. You know my outline better than I do. Yeah.
And then, of course, you teach them the things on the wall, an interactive thing. So it's really great. And I think it's just perfect for kicking off a meeting, because he's going to introduce everyone. He's going to get people super engaged. He's going to get the energy up. So I think it's a lot of fun. So there's so many things about Ron that are fun, but there's one that is so touching, and it's also one of my all-time favorite things about you. First of all, thank you for your service. You are a veteran. And I'd like for you to talk about the Afghan wall, how you decided to do that, how many times you've done it, and just share that story, because that to me is one of the most patriotic, beautiful ways that you've used your gift to honor fallen soldiers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yes, I served in Afghanistan. I was deployed in 2007. After 9/11, I've been teaching memory seminars for 33 years. When 9/11 happened, I was a decade into my career and I was 28 years old. And that's an odd time for somebody to join the military, but September 11th is a once in a lifetime event. So I joined the military, but I did it as a reservist. So I continued being the memory guy, but I also did 1 week in the month and 2 weeks in the summer. And in 2007, I ended up being deployed to Afghanistan. After I returned from Afghanistan, that's when I returned in the first part of 2008. 2009 and 10, 11 and 12, I was competing in memory tournaments, breaking records, that kind of stuff. But then it reached a point where I just realized, I can keep memorizing a deck of cards, and it's okay. But I was just like, it's cool for me to get these accomplishments, but I want to do something more meaningful with my memory. So I decided to memorize everybody who died in the war in Afghanistan in the order of their death. It's 2,400 people, ranked first name, last name. It's 7,500 words. The easiest way I can to describe it is imagine you're at the Vietnam Wall and you're watching somebody write out the Vietnam Wall from memory. That's what I do, except it's Afghanistan, and it's on a 52-foot long wall, and it takes me about 11 or 12 hours to do it. Gail, were there the very first time I ever
That's
wrote
right.
it in Fort Worth, and I'll always be grateful for that.
I remember. And people, oh, I feel so emotional even thinking about it because people wait. They
Yeah.
know, and they'll come up and ask, like, when will you be writing so and so's name? So then, Ron's got to stop and think, okay, I know that name, it's okay. I'm on number 300. That's 700. Oh, it'll probably be, he does estimates, but they literally wait to see that name. It's very powerful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a Navy SEAL, TC Cummings, and he is my mindset coach, and I've hired him over the years for my mindset off and on. And I had hired him during that time that I was preparing for that, and he was a military guy, Navy SEAL, and he said, "Ron," he said, "Where are you going to write this out?" I said, "Man, I don't even know." I said, "If I just get a board, a piece of plywood or several pieces of plywood, and I write it out in a field somewhere, and I'm the only one that sees it." He said, "No, Ron." He said, "You truly don't understand what's going to happen." And I didn't. He said, "You're going to be writing that wall out." He said, "And somebody's going to walk by and they're going to say, 'What is this?' And you're going to tell them. And they are going to stand there with tears in their eye and they're going to say, 'My son is on that, my daughter, my ex-husband, my cousin,' and they are going to wait for hours in anticipation of you writing their loved one's name. And when you get closer to the name, they're going to get emotional and they're going to." And I said, "TC, I appreciate your support. You are a true friend, and I appreciate your encouragement, but I don't think that's going to happen." Not only has that happened, it has happened probably 20 times. It's so emotional, and every time somebody stands at that wall waiting for hours for me to write a
Mhm.
specific name.
You did it on one of the morning shows, maybe CBS, I'm thinking, didn't you? Around one of the holidays?
I was on CBS with Nora O'Donnell, who I got
Hmm.
introduced to through a connection of a speech you booked me for.
Right.
Thank you for that. Nora O'Donnell interviewed me, and she was so nice. And then Fox News actually had me write it
Fox,
out.
that's right. And did Marcus Luttrell come one time? I'm thinking I remember that story.
He
See,
did.
I drank your juice. I've got that memory going.
And that was actually through an event that was through you too. One of your company people who works for your company had a connection with a military charity called Boot and Shoot, and so
Oh yeah, Megan.
yeah,
Yes,
her dad.
that's
And
right.
so I was out there for Boot and Shoot, and it was a military charity, and I was writing on the wall, and I feel this presence behind me, and I'm writing, and as I'm writing, I'm like, who is? Normally, when somebody's looking, I'll say, "Is there a name you're looking for?" They'll say yes, and I'll take them right to it. I mean, I can go directly to the name. So I turned around, and I was about to say, "Is there a name you're looking for?" And it was Marcus Luttrell, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" I knew what names he was looking for, but I didn't want to. I didn't I said, "Excuse me, is there a name you're looking for?" And he said, "Yeah, Tummelson and Dietz, who were Navy SEALs, and Dietz
Mhm.
died on the mountain with him, or died on the mountain that he was on."
Right.
So I walked him down to the opposite end of the wall. I pointed to the names. He stared at them for a minute, and it was just silence. And then he hit me on the shoulder and he said, "That's some good shit." And that's all he said. And then I just walked away, and he stared at the names for a few minutes.
Oh, unbelievable. So when's the last time you did the wall, Ron?
The last time I did it was November of 2021. My goal is to restart that in this Memorial Day
Yeah,
2025. Do it again.
beautiful. It's beautiful. You've also recently done something with the Bible. That's no small undertaking. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I it's something that in a way I've kind of avoided, to be honest with you, because I always wanted to be the memory guy. I never wanted to be the Bible memory guy. Not that it's just from a branding thing. I didn't want to, but it became an overwhelming desire of my customer base. I kept asking them, if you could
Really
memorize anything,
interesting.
what would you want to memorize? And so many said Bible verses. So I created
Interesting.
a program, how to memorize the Bible. And I sent it out to my list in 2020 during COVID. And I could not believe the sales. I mean, it was just over the top. So since then, I've created several different memory programs. One, how to memorize specific verses. One, how to memorize every chapter of the Bible. There's 1,189 chapters, and it's just getting great response from my customers. And I'm enjoying it myself. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it was never a spiritual passion for me to create
Sure.
a product, but it is meaningful to me. And I will tell you this, that it was probably the my mom passed away 2 years ago. And right before she died, we had a conversation about this. And I just know that she would be so happy that because she was a person very deep in her faith. And
Yes, she was.
I know this would be making her so happy. So I enjoy doing it.
That's awesome. So you've utilized it for the wall. You've utilized it to teach people how to memorize the Bible. We're just coming off the World Series. You have a love for baseball. What have you done with your memory in baseball?
Well, there for a while, I was memorizing the World Series winners just for fun. But you know what? Baseball's a game of numbers. And I will just sit at a baseball game and I'll look at the scoreboard and I will not necessarily memorize the numbers, but translate all the numbers into pictures as fast as I can. I'll be the batting average and stuff like that. So I use baseball games sometimes as a chance to practice my memory. Here's the thing: to remember anything, it needs to be a picture. So Lisa's the Mona Lisa, Karen is a carrot, Brian is a brain, Frank is a Frankfurter, Matt is a doormat. A number needs to be a picture too. So I do love baseball. You said something earlier. You said, Ron, you were running through the audience, and when you got to a name, you skipped it because you didn't know it, and then you kept going. That is a lesson to everybody, actually, for your memory. If you are going along in your day and you can't remember something, the best thing you can do is stay relaxed. So skip whatever it is that's giving you problems and go on and do something else, and your brain will stay relaxed, and the answer could pop up.
Mhm.
So back to baseball, when I need to just relax my brain and stay calm, which is the healthiest state for the brain to be in, I'll just go to a baseball game.
Interesting. I love that. Um, what are some of the things that your everyday average person can do to improve their memory?
Well, the biggest reason you don't remember names is because you're not focused. In other words, if somebody's walking towards you and you're walking towards them, if you are saying, or most people are thinking, oh, what do I think of her? What does she think of me? Have I seen her before? What business deals are we going to do? Do I still have that stain in my shirt from lunch right here? How's my hair look? What contract am I going to get her to sign? And all these things are going through our mind when we meet somebody, and in that moment they say, hi, my name is Gail, or my name is Karen, or Lisa, or Brian. And you in 2 seconds later, 2 seconds
Yeah.
later, looking at them, you're like, what did they just say their name was? When I speak at a conference, and like that, for that lumber conference, And I said, guys, you're getting ready to go into this trade show and you're gonna network. People are gonna be walking up to you, saying their name, and you're gonna be thinking of what business connections are we gonna make and all this. Get all that out of your mind. When a new person starts walking towards you, ask yourself one question. What is their name? Well, you don't know their name, so you're not going to get an answer. But by asking yourself that question, it's going to focus your brain and you're going to hear the name. And if you hear the name, you have a much likelier chance of remembering the name.
Yeah. That's so true. For me, I feel like if I write something down, then I can remember it forever. But that's weird. You're not walking around meeting people. Hold on a minute. Let me write that down.
Right. You can't, it really can't. And, I mean, you could write it down immediately after they leave, though, and there's nothing wrong with that. But number one, focus your brain, ask yourself the question, what is their name?
Yeah.
And then when they say their name, now this takes a bit of a time to build up to and get good at, but turn their name into a picture. Steve is a stove, Brian is a brain, Matt is a doormat, Karen is a carrot. Now everybody knows how old I am because I'm thinking of all common names from, for people who were born in the 1970s or whatever. But, now they're more,
diversity in names. Yeah.
Yes. But have a name for Taylor. That's a young name, a name of a young person. Taylor, think of a tailor. You're getting a tailor-made suit. So think in pictures and your mind can remember it better.
That's great. So I know in the past few years, you've made some big transformations. I know you really got into jiu-jitsu. Talk to me a little bit about that. How's that going?
Well, it's I get beat up. I don't know if I'm getting better, but people have, somebody asked me, they're like, are you any good? You've been doing this for a decade. I'm like, I tell you what, here's the thing. If I got into a match with somebody who's brand new, I'm going to win, right? Been training as long as me, they're probably going to win. But it's really changed my life. I gave a speech 10 years ago in Washington, D.C. for a group they owned gyms, and most of them were martial arts gyms. And I memorized a 50-digit number. I said it forwards and backwards, and all these jiu-jitsu guys, some of them were in the UFC, were like, oh, man, that's awesome. And I was 225 pounds of pure fat. And I said, guys, it's not that impressive. It's just technique like jujitsu. And I'm in DC, and I said, matter of fact, and I didn't think there was going to be anybody there who had a gym in Fort Worth. So I thought I was pretty safe in saying this. If I said, guys, if any of you, to prove that you can learn memory and I can learn jujitsu, if any of you have a gym in Fort Worth, a jujitsu gym, I'll join it. A guy in the front row raised his hand and I'm like, oh no, this is not what I was hoping for. And so I get off stage and I text my friend Brian, who had been trying to get me to go to jiu-jitsu for 2 years. And I texted Brian, I'm like, man, I got myself in a mess. I've agreed to go to this guy, Paul Halmey's gym. Will you go with me just so I'm not nervous? And he's like, you moron. That's the gym I've been trying to get you to go to for 2 years. So it's just transformed my confidence a little bit and health-wise too. I've made a transformation.
Yeah, I can tell. And the other thing we were briefly talking about before we started recording, but you were a downtown Fort Worth guy. And then you bought this property like in the middle of nowhere. How's that going?
It's going good. There's a lot more to living in the country than a guy who lived in the city thought when he bought it, I thought it was just going to be green acres and whatever. Everything was going to be fine. But it's good. I got about 20 acres. I just recently built a half-a-mile road. When they gave me the invoice for it, I'm like, did you build this out of diamonds or gravel? I mean, this is a gravel road. But it's good, and it's a very enjoyable process for me. I just love being out in nature, and it is just so peaceful for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, I could talk to you all day long, but I think if there's one thing that you would want meeting planners to know about you, what would that be?
I think that, this is an incredibly fun meeting. I mean, they're going to be laughing. They're going to be having a good time. When I memorize 200 names, they're going to be, and repeat them to start off the meeting, they're just going to be blown away. But it has also tremendous takeaway value. It's not just entertainment. I will do memory demonstrations that no other memory person on the planet will attempt, not because they can't, but because they don't have the confidence in themselves to attempt it, because it's a risk when you have 200 people stand up. And if you, as a memory guy, can't say their names, your whole speech is blown. I've been doing it 33 years. There was only one or two times that I kind of struggled. So I get it right virtually 100% of the time. But it's tremendous fun because the audience can sense he's taking a risk right now. So
Yeah.
it's not just fun. They're on the edge of their seat like,
Yeah.
this is a risk for him. And when I pull it off, it's so much fun. But I want the meeting planners to know it's more than just fun. I'm going to walk them through step by step. How does remembering names and faces help you in your business? How does giving speeches and presentations without notes help your confidence in your business? How does learning faster help your business? And I'm going to do it in a way where they're laughing the entire time. One person said, Ron, we knew we were getting a memory expert. We didn't know we were getting a comedy show. And I'm like, I don't know if it's a comedy show, but I'm going to have them laughing the entire time. And if the group is sales based, it's an out of the park no brainer. If and one thing people don't understand or don't see, and it's my fault for not making the connection, but a lot of people are looking for a leadership speaker. What defines, think about the leadership skills of remembering names and faces. That's a leadership skill. The leadership skill of being able to stand in front of a podium and give a speech, like, be a great orator. That's a leadership skill. And when your memory is, you're not having to use notes, you can do that. So you just asked me, in conclusion, give me one thing. And I gave you like several things.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, I remember one time you spoke, I think again, it was for YPO, I'm pretty sure. And one of the members hired you to come to his company. I think he had like 500 employees and he wanted to memorize their names. He wanted to walk down the hall and say, hello, Sally. And you took him on and tutored him and got him to that point. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are, and he was a YPO member. I didn't meet him at YPO, but
Okay.
this is a crazy story. This is the craziest thing that's ever happened to me in 33 years, and it'll take me 90 seconds to tell this story, but it's worth it. I was in the Dallas Morning News and the Star Telegram, and in that article they mentioned. Matter of fact, I think it was the article you and I were in together.
I remember that. Cheryl Hall, Dallas Morning News. Yes.
Dallas Morning News.
Yeah.
In that article, it mentioned that I went to the University of North Texas. As fate would have it, there's a guy in Dallas named Brent Ryan. If you live in Dallas and you're driving down 635, right near the Galleria, there's a building that says Ryan at the top. Well, Brent Ryan's assistant was reading the paper and she's like, this guy went to North Texas. We're having a conference in 2 weeks. I bet Brent would love to have this guy speak. So I didn't know who Brent Ryan was. I didn't do any research. It was so terrible that I didn't. I should have, but I did research, but not to the point where I knew details about where he went to college and all this stuff. But I'm giving my speech and I memorized a 50-digit number. And Brent Ryan said, Ron, if you can teach me how to do that, I'll give you $100,000. And I kind of laughed because he was paying me and my speaking fee is not $100,000. So I thought it was a joke. And so I just went on my speech. I ignored him. I didn't ignore him, but I laughed and I kept going. I understood he was the boss. At the end of my speech, by the way, I've talked to Brent Ryan many times since then. I have permission to use his name and tell this story. At the end of the meeting, I said, guys, let me say that 50-digit number backwards now. A guy at the back of the room named Jerry Ridgely. Jerry said, Ron, I've been looking at this number. I can say it now. And Brent Ryan turned to Jerry Ridgely and he said, Jerry, if you say the number, I'll give you the $100,000. And I'm like, what? I just said it. Jerry Ridgely says the 50-digit number. Brent Ryan gets out of his seat, walks over there, writes him a check for $100,000, hands it to him. And 2 days later, I get an email from Jerry Ridgely. He says, Ron, I got the money. The cash is in my bank. I owe you dinner. I'm like, you don't owe me dinner. You owe me a car. And anyways, I was in like Panama or Guatemala giving you, this was like a couple days later. I was in Panama or Guatemala giving a speech for EO. And I get the email from Jerry Ridgely saying, the money's in my bank. And I'm like, you know what? Forget dinner with Jerry. Although I did it, I'm going. I want to talk to Brent. And I emailed Brent and I said, Brent, you have 900 employees. I will teach you how to memorize all 900 of your employees, and I'll give you a 30% discount off what you paid Jerry. I'll only charge you $70,000. And I was like, my fingers were nervous as I was typing and I hit enter. 10 minutes later, I get a reply back. He said, Ron, great minds think alike. Call me. Here's my cell phone. And I ended up coaching him, and we negotiated a little less than 70,000. But you know what? I remember. This is such a great point, and I'll sum it up with this. I was sitting in his office, and he wrote me the biggest check of my life in a single payment. And he said, Ron, a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy for paying you this amount of money to learn how to remember my 900 employees. But he said something I'll never forget. He said, I know something about money. He said, if I can make this payment and you can help me leverage a skill, that skill is going to make me way more money than what I'm writing you on that check. And he said, and number two, if it helps you, and I said, oh, it does. And he said, well, then I'm happy. I said, I'm happy too. And I coached him to remember his employees' names.
Well, I stand by every meeting needs Ron White. You just don't know it yet. So thank you so much for being here, Ron. And if you're out there listening and you have the bug, give us a call, because I promise Ron will add enthusiasm and energy to your next event. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thank you, Gail. I loved it.
Thank you for joining us on Backstage Pass with Gail Davis. Tune in for more exclusive interviews and pro tips to elevate your events. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us. We'll catch you next time behind the curtain on Backstage Pass.